Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much indeed for joining this hour-long webinar run from the Shoalhaven City Council in conjunction with a number of very key and important panellists, which Amanda Finlay, the Mayor, will introduce. But from my perspective, my name's Vince DiPietro, and the Local Recovery Coordinator for the Shoalhaven Post Bushfires. And we've been through a lot together in the last year. And it's fair to say that there's an awful lot of very, very vivid memory of some of the things that we're going to be talking and preparing people around. You'll shortly hear from an expert in the field from New South Wales Health. But before Catherine comes on, I just urge people to be ready to turn off and switch this off if it's causing any undue or unexpected reaction or unhappy memories for any of the listeners. It's really important that we get the message out to see exactly what we have in place, the mechanisms that are ready to go, and very importantly, what checklists we can all grow as individuals in the Shoalhaven. But if that generates any sort of angst, be ready to and be very, very comfortable turning this off, because you can access it later. We're recording all sessions and putting them on the Shoalhaven City Council website. You can access this later at your own leisure. But for the moment, can I please first acknowledge the traditional people of the land on which we meet today, within all parts of the Shoalhaven and further afield who may be listening, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to any Torres Strait Island and Aboriginal people who are here with us online today. I also acknowledge that a significant effect and outcome has been experienced by all those people, insofar that fires and floods have had an incredible impact on the Indigenous community and their well-being, culture and history within the Shoalhaven because of the effect that these emergencies have had on the land. That said, I'd like to start this ball rolling with an official invite, welcome to you all from Mayor Amanda Finlay. Over to you, Amanda.
Thanks, Vince, and I'd like to acknowledge country as well, and to acknowledge all the elders of the past, present and those that are emerging. And also to all of you in the Shoalhaven, it's been a cracker of a Shoalhaven day, and I thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to join this esteemed panel, I believe an esteemed panel that's come together to get you ready for the next season, because who can believe that 9 months has gone by, and who can believe what we've been through? It's certainly been the rolling disaster season for the Shoalhaven. But on the panel this afternoon, you've heard from Vince. Vince has been ably leading up the recovery, and I'm really appreciative of his time that he's spent in the Shoalhaven over the last 9 months. I was thinking before about what's the hierarchy, but there's no hierarchy here, because in an emergency, everybody just mucks in, and everyone mucks in under the guidance of Ray Steins, who's our liaison from the police. Also, we have Warren Goodall, who's our Regional Emergency Management Officer, who will be joining us this afternoon. Kim White, our Local Emergency Management Officer. Mark Williams, a well-known face in the Shoalhaven from the RFS. And of course, we've got our good friend Catherine coming in from Health, our CEO Stephen Dunshay from Shoalhaven City Council. And I'm sure that by the end of this hour, you'll feel more informed. Well, I hope you'll feel more informed and better prepared for the summer that we have ahead. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Vince.
Thanks very much, Amanda. Just to elaborate on that a little, the agenda this afternoon, over the next hour, we want to be able to give all participants in this webinar a bird's eye view of the emergency management committee and structure that oversees the preparation and the planning. We want to be able to take them in a walk through the Emergency Operations Centre and the Integrated Emergency Management Centre, which has ratepayers in the Shoalhaven we have all contributed to, because it's the Shoalhaven City Council amenity or facility. And then we're going to walk through with the Leocon, the RFS and the Regional Emergency Management Officer, just walking it down, progressively getting to the really, really minute nuts and bolts that we can inform the folks listening of how they can best prepare themselves individually. So the idea of this is to make sure people see what is in place, what is available to us, and how best we can actually meet the challenge of the imminent bushfire season. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Catherine Thorpe from New South Wales government and to talk about mental health and to just give a few words of encouragement about the forthcoming season. So over to you, please, Catherine.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me today. So I'm Catherine, as Vince mentioned. I work for New South Wales Health as a mental health clinician in the Shoalhaven Bushfire Recovery Service. So today I want to simply emphasise the need for all of us to pay attention to our self-care, both as we navigate our way forward, but also during the webinar sessions today. So as mentioned already by Vince, please take care of yourself today during the sessions. Some of us might start to experience uncomfortable feelings or memories from the last bushfires or other events that have recently occurred or in the past. If you start to feel at all overwhelmed, please take a break, step away, take a moment to breathe and turn off the presentation. They will be available, as Vince mentioned, on the council website, so you can go back to them when you're feeling ready. As a result of the bushfires, some of us are going through the toughest experiences of our lives and might be experiencing new or intense emotions. It's very important to take time out regularly to replenish your energy, to refill your bucket. This means putting the focus back onto yourself occasionally. Now that's going to look slightly different for everyone, but there's some common elements that we know boost our well-being and help us refuel so we can tackle what life throws at us. So try to have regular contact with people who make you feel good. That might be joining a social group, it might be having some friends or family members over, or you can shoot the breeze with, having a barbecue, that sort of thing. Regular physical activity is beneficial both for our bodies and our brains. So maybe make a commitment to walk the dog each day, or go for a swim, a surf, enjoy our beautiful local region and play sport. Perhaps most importantly, spend time doing something you enjoy, something that brings you some amount of pleasure. So initially, people might have got through days and the weeks on adrenaline, willpower, sheer grit and determination. But we can only do that for so long without paying attention to our self-care before it starts to take a toll on us physically, mentally and psychologically. So as time goes on, people might find you're more run down or feeling fatigued, not sleeping well, or maybe getting colds or other health complaints. You might notice that your moods aren't as easy to control, or that you respond to things with emotions that feel out of character for you. You might be worried about things that you never used to concern you, or maybe you're worried about the future. It can also be hard to concentrate and think clearly, so you might have difficulty focusing or remembering things. These are actually all normal responses, but they are also a sign that your mind and body are under stress. So if you notice that these things are hanging around or becoming more frequent, or that they're interfering with your ability to do your normal day-to-day activities, it's actually worth seeking out some support. You don't have to cope with this on your own. It can help to work with a professional or a counsellor to work out what's going on, and also to develop some strategies that work for you. The support lines and services you can see on the slide are all free or bulk billed, or you can just give us a call. It doesn't really matter how small or big you feel your issue is. The Shoalhaven Bushfire Recovery Service team are happy to listen and assist you. We can talk through your options, put your mind at ease, or give you some more detailed and individual assistance, and we can also connect you with other supports. So now, as we move forward into the rest of the webinar sessions, I'd like to invite everyone to take a moment wherever you are to take a couple of deep, slow breaths. So let's breathe in deep and long and slow, and now breathe out slow and deep, and repeat. So deep breath in and slow, deep breath out. And that's just one strategy we can use during the day when we're feeling a little bit stressed. Thanks everyone for taking time to listen. Please take care of yourself during this session and into the future. Bye for now.
Thanks very much, Catherine. That was terrific. And at any point, please, I re-emphasise, if this is causing you any distress at all, just turn it off. And we'll, if you need to speak to someone, you can call the council helpline 4429 5888, and we'll be able to get appropriate assistance to you. Or if you just want to talk to someone in slower time, and provide that as well. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Chief Executive Officer of the Shoalhaven, not so much in that role, but more importantly, excuse me, in his role as the Chair of the Local Emergency Management Committee. Over to you, Stephen Dunshea, please.
And thanks very much, Vince, for that introduction. Firstly, can I just pass on my thanks to the whole team that have worked so hard to put these webinars together today. This is one strategy that the council, in consultation and collaboration with the emergency agencies, have developed to raise awareness in the Shoalhaven about the upcoming bushfire season, and it's difficult in these COVID circumstances to get this information out as effectively as we would like to, but I think the team have done an excellent job in putting together this webinar. So and also thank you to all those that have taken the time this afternoon to join in. So welcome along. I suppose the first point I'd like to make this afternoon is that we all have to accept that emergencies are inevitable, and as we know, they can and they do have significant social, economic and environmental consequences and impacts. If we can just go back to the other slide, just firstly, just flick that back, please. And we've seen that very dramatically across the Shoalhaven during the summer of 1920 and the devastating Currawong fire, followed by floods and now the COVID situation. So that bushfire, the recent floods and the wind events, let's not forget the winds that attacked us so severely in recent weeks. And as I said, of course, the global coronavirus crisis, all these things emphasise the need for all of us to have prepared appropriate and effective prevention, preparation, response and recovery strategies and plans, and to have those in place to help us through these emergency situations that we've lived through across our local government area. And within the towns and villages and communities of the Shoalhaven, of which we have 49 towns and villages, all of which have their unique challenges in dealing with these emergency situations. So Shoalhaven City Council works in partnership with the emergency services, both the state and federal government agencies, with charities and other organisations to support our community through the recovery phase of emergencies. Similarly, Council works with these agencies to prepare for future emergencies, including the coming bushfire season, and part of which that preparation is what we're doing today, and as I said, in collaboration with the emergency agencies and emergency authorities, and you'll hear from others later on. So as Chief Executive Officer / General Manager of the Council, one of my roles is to chair what's called the Local Emergency Management Committee. And so that's really what I particularly want to talk to you about today is the role of the Emergency Management Committee, where that fits into the emergency response structure and particularly what its role is. So if I can move to that other slide, thank you. So the Local Emergency Management Committee, it's actually convened according to the State Emergency and Rescue Management Act of 1989. And that committee is responsible for the Shoalhaven Emergency Management Plan. This is a document prepared by or with the assistance or through that committee, the Local Emergency Management Committee, And that plan is made publicly available and is available on Council's website. Should you choose to go and have a look at that, and I would encourage you to do that as an outcome of today's webinar. So the Local Emergency Management Committee is responsible for preparing plans in relation to the prevention of, preparation for, response to, and the recovery from emergencies within the Shoalhaven. And if you look at that diagram on that screen and the blue boxes to the left, so the LEMC, the Local Emergency Management Committee, is responsible to back up the hierarchy to what's called the Regional Emergency Management Committee, which in turn then is responsible to the State Emergency Management Committee. And that committee meets on a quarterly basis or more regularly if needed. And we have had some special meetings in recent months of the Local Emergency Management Committee, more informal meetings as we've worked collaboratively, council, with police, health, and other agencies in dealing with the COVID-19 crisis and its impacts on the Shoalhaven and preparing the Shoalhaven for that. So as I said, it meets on a quarterly basis, and important to note that the Local Emergency Management Committee is not responsible and doesn't have the role for leading the response to emergencies. It has those particular functions as I've mentioned. So if we move to the next slide. So the Local Emergency Management Plan, as I said, records the agreed arrangements for the control of emergency situations and the coordination of resources during those emergencies. And as I said, that's a public document available on Council's website. The M Plan, if I can refer to it that way, EMPLAN, is based on the following principles. Firstly, that the responsibility for preparation, response and recovery rests at the local level initially. Secondly, that the control of emergency response and recovery operations is conducted at the lowest effective level. So that's consistent with what I said before. It's not the Local Emergency Management Committee that's running emergencies and responding to emergencies. It's the lead agency, be that RFS, be that SES, be that police, be it whoever, be it New South Wales Health. So emergency preparation, the other principle, emergency preparation, response and recovery operations should be conducted with all agencies carrying out their normal functions wherever possible. And that's what we aim to do when we get together in these emergency situations, build it into our normal operations as best we can. And the other principle, prevention measures remain the responsibility of the authorities, agencies charged by statute within that responsibility. So members, who is, flick back if you could please, the other slide, a little bit quick for me. So who are the members of the Local Emergency Management Committee? We have on 3 levels. We have emergency service members, we have supporting agency members, and of course we have council. So if I just go through those briefly, the emergency services members being Rural Fire Service, Fire and Rescue New South Wales, the State Emergency Service, New South Wales Ambulance, New South Wales Police, Royal Surf Lifesaving Australia, Defence, Marine Rescue, the Local Emergency Management Officer, which is a council position, a position within council. Kim White is our Local Emergency Management Officer. The REMO, or the Regional Emergency Management Officer, Warren Goodall is the REMO, and Warren will talk to you shortly. And the LEOCON, the Local Emergency Operations Controller. And we're represented today by Inspector Ray Steins from New South Wales Police, who is the LEOCON, and Ray will talk to you shortly as well. So they're the emergency service members. The supporting agency members on the current committee: Illawarra Shoalhaven Local Health, the Environmental Protection Authority, a range of utilities, Transport for New South Wales, Local Land Services, Engineering Services, Welfare, National Parks, Shoalhaven Water at the table, ABC Media, Telecommunications Services, and the Jervis Bay Territory are also members. Council, next slide please. So Shoalhaven Council's role, in addition to me, the General Manager, CEO, as the chair of the committee, Council's role is to provide support to the emergency and those other support agencies. So that support that we provide through liaison officers that attend the emergency situations out at the Integrated Management Centre and the Emergency Operations Centre, in the areas of our water and sewer operations across the Shoalhaven, coordinating transport needs, whether that's road closures or whatever else needs to happen, or alternate transport routes, engineering services, environmental services, and very importantly, we have a media and communications team out there through all emergencies. So, also, one of our prime functions at Council at those emergency situations is to facilitate the full or partial activation of what's referred to as an emergency evacuation centre or emergency evacuation centres. And in doing so, Council is required to follow the Shoalhaven Emergency Operations Centre standard operating procedures, which actually define what is an emergency evacuation centre, and the M plan actually notes and advises or determines where those emergency evacuation centres are. So in that regard, Council supports the local emergency operations controller, and we do that in accordance with the New South Wales Emergency Operations Centre policy. So that's really what I wanted to get across today, is the role of the local emergency management centre. And I understand shortly you, as Vince alluded to, there's going to be a brief tour via video through the emergency operations centre. So thank you very much, Vince. That's all from me at this point.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Stephen. We're just going to take a very short video break now. One of the really important things is we're trying to go from the big picture down to the small. So, and this is about getting ready, and part of that getting ready is being confident and understanding the mechanisms and the places and the people in place that are involved and engaged in basically keeping our city well and safe. Now, what we've got is a video of the Integrated Emergency Management Centre. Now, for those that aren't familiar with it, we're really lucky in the Shoalhaven, and we're one of the very few local government areas to have such a facility. It's been paid for and established by the Shoalhaven City Council, so our rates at work. It's an amazing facility, which I can assure you, after many years in naval uniform, matches any operations or ops room setup that I've ever seen. But it's where a whole number of agencies come together, and so come the actual time of the emergency, everybody is located in the one place. We conduct almost every one of our emergency committee meetings or our recovery action team meetings. Everything happens in the one place. But what we've got here is a young fella called Brad from the RFS who made this video up in early December during the last fires. But it's a great insight into the amenity here at 92 Albatross Road, which you as taxpayers own, and the centre from which the resources are allocated to get to the places we need to be in time of emergency. So over to the video, please, Sharon.
Good morning, Bradley Stewart, Royal Fire Service. This is the Shoalhaven Fire Control Centre. This is where the incident management team is working from to support the ongoing fires here in the Batemans Bay, Shoalhaven area. This is the logistics cell in here, so we've got volunteers and agency representatives assisting with taking phone calls and answering messages, also coordinating resources such as fire units, strike teams, firefighters, aircraft, hotel bookings, and food. This is our operations section. So this is where the operations team are coordinating the resources that are moving around the fire ground, including aircraft. This is our fire behaviour analysts. So they look at the weather, they look at the fuel availability, they look at the topography, and they make predictions as to the rate of spread around the community. We have national parks people here assisting with the coordination of planning. So we have a planning team here. So they're looking 4 or 5 days in advance as to what we can do to bring this fire to a successful resolution. We have specialist GIS mapping operators here, so they're trying to do all the mapping and keep it up to date. That flows on to our firefighters, but also to the public through Fires Near Me, etc. They get to see the extent and the scale of the fire. Down here we have our radio communication section, so they communicate with the resources that are in the field. So we push information to them, we pull information back as required, and we use that to help obviously inform the community for our community messaging. This is the community liaison team, so the role is to take phone calls and assist members of the public. This section here is our aviation section. They're not too busy at the moment because the aviation resources haven't launched just yet, so they're out doing some briefings. So we've got up to 12 aircraft available to us at the moment, including the large air tanker as required. Okay, so this is the Emergency Operations Centre where we have all of our support agencies across New South Wales, so Department of Health, Police, Local Council, SES, we have RMS, and they're supporting the ongoing operation here and helping to keep the community safe. Thank you.
And that is a terrific segue into the next speaker, who most will be very familiar with from the fire season, and that's Inspector Mark Williams from the RFS. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Vince, and thanks everybody for coming along this afternoon and the invite, obviously, to be here and give this presentation in preparation of this coming fire season. So, as we just saw there, the Integrated Emergency Centre that we have here within Shoalhaven, as Vince said, is one of the best, if not the best, in the state. We are held in very high esteem around the state, and we're very, very fortunate to have such a good facility, keenly supported by all the agencies and obviously council as well. To have the Emergency Operations Centre right next door to our Operations Centre, literally across the hallway, was imperative and vital in the fact that we actually had that connection between the communications of both the combat agency and that of the support from the Emergency Management Committee. So rest assured, we have the best of facilities in the state here, and they were put into full effect and full use during the recent campaign and in campaigns since, such as the flooding and also COVID to a degree. Last season, as we've mentioned and as we all remember, was extremely serious and devastating to everybody concerned, and I won't harp on that. And instead, today we're focusing on where we are and in preparation for next year. So now starting to get down into a bit of the nuts and bolts of what we have here and how you can start to prepare yourselves ready for not only this season, but any future seasons and any other future events that may occur. Locally, we run the local government area of Shoalhaven out of this district office. We have 36 rural fire brigades within the district, and in approximate numbers about 1,500 volunteers at any one time within those brigades. Locally here within the district office, on a day-to-day basis, we have a number of full-time staff, including myself, to assist in the management of those brigades and also to work in the operations aspect for our brigades to attend not only the major incidents such as the Carawan fire, but also the other day-to-day incidents which you'd see the brigades out doing regularly, being anything from a garbage bin alight to a cut up a tree through to flood assistance and assisting our other agencies as need be, as well as structural fires and motor vehicle accidents. Since the fires, we've had over 250 new members join our rural fire service. We're working as best we can through the COVID restrictions to get them trained up, ready to also join the ranks and be able to respond during the upcoming season. So that is a work ongoing, and it's something that we're continuing to implore for people, anybody who's wishing to further assist their local community. Our doors are always open for new members, and we'll go into a bit of extra detail shortly about how you can make contact with those brigades and register your interest should you so choose. Those brigades and ourselves here hopefully are looking at a season a lot more benign than what we were seeing this time last year. At this time last year, we were already fighting fires, significant fires up in the northern tablelands in New South Wales, and it continued down and through the state over the rest of the season. What we're seeing locally here with a couple of east coast lows is our soil moisture is certainly increased to the point that we are now at saturation levels, and that will stead us in good stead, ready for the start of the fire season, which starts on the 1st of September. In saying that, we can't be complacent. We need to be aware of our situation, and it doesn't take very long for the ground to dry out. Extreme winds can come through and assist in that drying out process, and as we all know, as the summer heat period comes through, that will also dry out the area, and we could well end up with a fire season still. So how do you self-prepare? The one thing that you would have heard us harping on about regularly, ad breaks, you name it, and even throughout the fire, was asking people to ensure that they have a bushfire survival plan. Now that plan is available either in hard copy through any of your local brigades or the district office here in Nowra, or you can get it online through the RFS website. I really implore, and in fact I almost expect that every resident in the Shoalhaven should already have one of those plans. If you don't, I implore you again, get onto that system, download, have a look at the material that's in it, and it is a very simple procedure to get you underway for starting to consider how and what you are going to do should an emergency come in and around your area. Such things as preparing your own house, knowing what flammable objects you've got around your house that you can have cleared away, making sure fuel such as firewood stacks aren't stacked up against the house, making sure your lawns are kept mowed, making sure you have water supplies available, making sure you know exactly what you're going to do in the event of an emergency. Are you going to leave? If you're going to leave, where are you going to go? And what are you going to take with you? I know Vince will go into a little bit more detail a bit later about what you can take with you, just as some examples. So please download that app, have a look through that program, and actually start looking and having that discussion with your family about what you are going to do to self-help yourselves. The RFS and all the other agencies are here to help wherever we possibly can, and we always will, but the self-help program for yourselves is paramount for everybody. And don't rely on the single source of information. The Fires Near Me app, the emergency warnings that we have to set out from time to time, our social media posts are all avenues to keep yourself up to date with the emergency situation as it develops. But don't rely on a single source of truth. If you rely on a Fires Near Me app and the app happens to go down or you lose power, where is your next source of truth going to come from? ABC Illawarra is our radio station, our network of ABC channels around the state, which we will promulgate all of our emergency warnings through. So have a number of different avenues that you can rely on, including your own situational awareness of what's going on around you by looking outside your doorstep to guess, or not guess, but understand what you are facing and what you are going to do. So without any further ado, I'll hand back to Vince, and as I said, more than welcome to take some questions later on.
Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks very much, Mark. And that's a good segue into the local emergency operational controller, Inspector Ray Steins from Nowra Police. Over to you, please, Ray.
Yeah, thanks, Vince. My name's Ray Steins. I'm the inspector at Nowra Police Station. I'm the officer in charge of Nowra Police, and part of my role is that as the liaison of the local emergency operations controller. There's another liaison at Nowra as well, which is Inspector Dave Cochran, and together our job is to manage and coordinate the EOC. To coordinate the EOC involves a number of agencies coming together, and the main role, or the primary role, is to support the combat agency in their efforts to fight or combat the emergency. It's not our role as an EOC to do that role for them, but anything that they need to help them undertake that role, we coordinate for them and supply it for them. That can be in relation to just having trees, fell areas cleared for asset protection, roadblocks, you name it, we'll do it. Whatever we need to do to help them achieve their goal, we'll attempt to do. A big thing about when I open up an emergency operations centre, the first thing that I decree is that everybody leaves their hats at the door. Right, we all work together to achieve the goal of helping the combat agency, and part of that is as soon as the EOC opens its front door, we go into recovery and preparation at the same time. Recovery will be to get communities back to some form of normality as soon as possible. If that means arranging with the RFS for a bushfire, for example, to have power put back on with the Integral Energy or Endeavour Energy, we will do it. And in saying that, for the preparation part, with the forecasters of the fire, they'll tell us where the forecast fire is going to go, and we'll prepare that area as best we can to reduce the impact of that fire, along with the RFS. Just quickly, the police role in relation to an emergency. Our role in its entirety is to protect life and property, and it doesn't matter what type of day or emergency it is, we will always do that, and that is just exacerbated during an emergency. We will do whatever we have to do in line with the combat agency to undertake that task. If that means getting people out of houses, we will do that. If that means putting up roadblocks and preventing people accessing areas, we will do that. If that means stopping people going back into their homes, we will do that. Like I said, our primary goal is protection of life and property, and I'll make no excuses for that. If I can just reiterate one thing that Mark said in that the preparation of your plan, when you are preparing your plan, and like Mark said, Vince will go into something a little bit more in depth later on, think about the minute thing that you've got that you need. If you need long-term medication and your plan is to stay, make sure you've got enough medication there to keep you going. It goes down to that degree. It's simple. If you can't manage to stay with the medication or have that sufficient medication to last you a period of time, then I would suggest your plan should be to leave the area. Mate, that's about it for me at the moment. Unless anyone's got some questions that I'm happy to answer later. All good.
Okay, thanks very much, Ray. And now we're coming down to a fine point, and now starting to focus on the things that you should be considering yourselves in readiness for the fire. And to help us navigate through that, the Regional Emergency Management Officer and Local Emergency Management Officers are both in place to do just that. And so at this point, I'll hand over to Warren Goodall, and over to you, please, Warren.
Thanks, Vince, and good afternoon, everybody. As Vince said, I'm the Regional Emergency Management Officer, and I'm a civilian employee within New South Wales Police. My role is to provide high-level guidance and support and interpretation of legislation to not only New South Wales Police, but a whole range of government and non-government organisations when it comes to things to do with emergencies. And every aspect of the emergency is part of that process. And I'm assisted as part of my teams, the people who are embedded in local council, the local emergency management officers. In your case, for Shoalhaven, it's Kim White. And Kim's role when we have an EOC operating is to effectively be the office manager for the Emergency Operations Centre and make sure that all the aims and objectives required by the combat agency and the Leocon are done as best as we can do them. So how does this move on to what you can do as members of the community? We all know that emergencies impact different people in different ways. What might be an impact on you may not be an impact on your neighbour, or to the same level of severity to your neighbour or the person across the road. So it's really imperative that individuals maintain what we call situational awareness. What we mean by that is be aware of what's happening around you, be aware of the weather conditions and so forth. If you know that we've got 3 or 4 days of rain forecast, or there's fires 50 kilometres or 20 kilometres or 10 kilometres away, you should have that on your radar and be working with your individual plans to see how that event will impact on you personally. Now, if you're in a position where you can look after yourself and manage your own circumstances, and bearing in mind things like Mark alluded to earlier on, where you may be isolated from serious assault for multiple days at a time, if not weeks at a time, if you're able to do that, that's fine. Manage your plan and follow your plan. But if you require assistance in any way, shape or form, your plan needs to be reviewed and modified to allow that to occur, so that you can move out earlier than maybe your neighbour moves out, that you can go to a place of safety. The emergency services will often give you enough information to assist you in making that decision on leaving early and going to a place of safety. The challenge we have with some individuals is that they often see their place of safety as being the community hall at the end of the street. I challenge you to think that if we want you to leave an area, we don't want you to stay down the road. We want you to go to a completely safe area, and that may well mean travelling a number of kilometres. If your plan requires that to occur, there may be processes in place that we can assist you with that, depending on the circumstances at the time, but we can't guarantee it. So there's a whole range of things that will assist you in having that situational awareness. And a lot of these are free applications that can be downloaded onto your various smart devices. Emergency Plus app is one device that can be one application that can be used, and it's really great for telling emergency services where you are and allowing you to quickly coordinate or contact the 000 lifeline system. We have the RFS Fires Near Me. Many of you used that during the recent fire events, and it was able to provide you with some good core information on what was happening with the fire event. SES have a similar application called Flood Safe. Obviously, it deals with floods. There's Live Traffic, which concentrates on government, New South Wales government based roads. So it may not have all the details on the local council roads. For that information, you probably need to go to your local council website to see where those roads are impacted. So there are a range of applications out there. We encourage you to use them to the best way you can, accepting that during some emergencies, and we saw that in the 2019-2020 fires, there will be times when telecommunications are down. So as part of your preparation and planning, you should consider having the old transistor radio, battery operated radio, that allows you to tune into our local ABC 97.3 and get up-to-date information from that ABC channel on what's happening in your area. The key to all of this is early planning. You know what's going to impact on you. You know what your strengths and weaknesses are. You know what your liabilities are. We don't have all that information. You need to plan for this. You need to be aware of what's going on around you, and you need to follow the advice and guidance that is offered by the various emergency services. Over to you, Vince.
Thanks, Warren. There are some really good, important and simple messages in there. What we might do is just move to a couple of questions that we've got from participants online, and then we'll just slowly build up, perhaps towards the end of the hour, just a simple consider before we put suggested lists of what to get ready and how to physically prepare, what things to have in a bag towards the end of the webinar. So the first question worth exploring is, we've had someone say, why isn't there a neighbourhood safer place or assembly area in my village? Well, rather than ask which village, perhaps we might just have a more broad view, Warren and Mark, on what a neighbourhood safer place is and how we define what can and cannot be one, and how an evacuation centre is determined. So perhaps, Mark, if we start with you, could you just explain how we come to a designation of a neighbourhood safer place? Mark Williams.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Vince. So firstly, with neighbourhood safer places, I guess the explanation needs to go with those. And it is listed on all the signs that you will see where these locations are identified, and that is that it is a place of last resort. And whilst that seems like a bit of a contradiction in terms, it is exactly what it means. A neighbourhood safer place shouldn't be relied on as the place to go to get information, a place to go to be looked after in any way, shape or form. It is a place that's identified. It's identified by the Rural Fire Service. It has to meet certain specifications. Now, those specifications need to allow us to adequately and happily advise you that if you get to a place like that, you should be okay in the event of a fire. It is not a guarantee. but it is the best place that you can possibly be if your plan and that bushfire plan that you have developed fails. So it is a place of last resort. If everything else fails, that's the place you can go, and it's at that location you should be okay. There's 28 of those within the Shoalhaven at present. We continually monitor that. We're continually trying to improve that and get more in. Some of them are simply a paddock in a field which has got enough open space there, you should be okay. Others are actually within an identified structure with certain parameters around it that meet the specifications. So that's what a neighbourhood safer place is. And as I said, we'll continue to roll those out as much as we possibly can where we can find locations that meet that specification.
Thanks, Mark. Warren, would you like to tackle the evacuation centre sort of parameters, what we look for and what deems something to be a suitable evacuation centre or not?
Certainly, thanks, Vince. Evacuation centres, by their simple definition, are a place of safety. And it is a little bit paradoxical sometimes to have an evacuation centre in the town or village that you are trying to evacuate. What we've done in the Shoalhaven, and in fact the whole of the South Coast, is pre-identify preferred locations that can accommodate large volumes of people. And even more so now with the COVID-19 challenges that we have in front of us. So we've pre-identified, and the Shoalhaven's done it pretty well. They've pre-identified a number of recommended locations that can accommodate a large number of people in a safe environment that is extremely unlikely to be at threat in the future because of that particular event that's going on. So the places we choose for a fire may well be different from the places we choose for a flood, for obvious reasons. The challenge we have with all that is that we have an obligation to provide certain facilities to those evacuation centres, and those facilities are around the general terms of welfare. So we need to provide accommodation, access to accommodation, preferably in hotels or something similar, rather than having people sleeping on floors. We need to be able to accommodate domestic pets. We need to be able to accommodate medical needs of people and the resources needed to provide those things for the community. So whilst in an ideal world, every community would have their own evacuation centre, the practical reality of that is just unfortunately not there. The challenges are, as I said, we need to move you to a place of safety or get you to move to a place of safety where you're not going to be impacted by that event if it goes pear-shaped again, and be able to provide you with a whole range of resources at those evacuation centres. The centres are reviewed on a regular basis. They are checked every minimum of every 12 months, and the locations are checked and reviewed about every 1 or 2 years based on the circumstances and the predictions of the weather. Over to you, Vince.
Thanks, Warren. That's probably a good segue. It's a bit of a snowball effect. If the direction is to leave now, and for whatever reason people do not leave, the compounding effect, particularly in summer months where our populations can at times multiply by factors of 10, means that the ability of evacuation centres to actually hold people, even some of the population, in a safe way becomes significantly diminished. Now, that's going to take on a whole new dimension in the COVID era, because obviously we don't want to be putting people into further harm's way in close proximity if social distancing is still required. But it's probably a good segue to perhaps if someone could explain what the terms mean. So what does leave now? What does watch and act? What does watch and act mean? What does find shelter in a safe place? What are the warnings we get? What do they actually mean? So could perhaps either Warren or Jenna or Mark take that on?
Yeah, I'm sure I can probably lead into the first of the 3 warnings that relate specifically to bushfire that we work. As most people will know, under a bushfire, we have the advice warning, and that's people knowing that there is a fire in an area. So on the Fires Near Me app or other methods of communication, you'll see advice, and as general, just advice letting you know that that's in the area. The next one's watch and act. Watch and act is meaning that the situation is getting more serious. It is a developing situation, and it means exactly as it says. We want people to start watching. We want people starting to act on their bushfire plan if they're in the close proximity of that incident. And then thirdly goes to emergency warning status. And that emergency warning status is exactly as it says also, and that's the fire or the event has got to a significant proportion where we have life and property directly under threat. With those emergency warnings, once we get to that stage, often we will put an emergency alert out. Now that alert is something that we can do either via door knocking if it's a very small area that we can get in earlier, or in some cases, as many people would have experienced previously, the message that comes across your phone or the phone call that gets made to your landline at home. The messages that come across with that will be specifically related to the incident at hand, and it will be specifically related to the area concerned. So examples such as shelter in place.